Thank you, Ryan. Hello, Sazi. You joined
Hi,
us
can you
just
hear
as we
me?
went live. We can hear you. And hello
Can
to
you hear me?
everyone. Yes.
Eish. I can
What
hardly
an
hear
intro.
myself.
Sanibona dokotela ninjani?
Hey, Leo.
It's good to see you, Baba.
So welcome everyone to our fourth webinar of this series. It's wonderful to see you all again after that amazing concert that we had. I feel like we should have another one just because the energies were so good at that time, and we've been through some things along the way. We thought it would all get a bit calmer. Yeah, so to those of us who are watching on Facebook, greetings to all of you. My name is Cameron. I'm one of the staff members at New Music SA. And just a big thank you to the National Arts Festival, who've been hosting us amazingly and keeping us all in check here. And a brief ad just to say that in the next 4 weeks, we're going to have a series around music business. This is all sponsored by the Samro and Samro Foundation, and really is aimed at educating around different aspects of music business. Be lovely to have you all there. Follow us on Facebook if you haven't already, in New Music SA. Yeah, to kick things off, we're talking about a concert, and we've got all the performers here from that concert and two composers. A wonderful concert that we presented in Cape Town at Youngblood Gallery in May. And yeah, just welcoming Neo Muyanga, the composer of one of the pieces. I'm looking at everyone on the screen here. There's Graham du Plessis, he was the cellist, David Lubbe, piano, Lungiswa, and Matthijs, musicians. And then on the panel, we've got Lukas Ligeti, who's in Miami at the moment. Amy joins us from London. Hello, Amy. Hello, Nonku Phiri. And hello, Sazi. Sazi, you can talk now. It's your turn. Sazi, you're muted. He makes a grand entrance and then he doesn't have anything to say.
Just like me. It's a pleasure, Cameron. Hi, hello. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to taking part in this webinar session. I hope I have something useful to add.
You already have. And I don't think I warned the panelists that Amy would be attending. I thought, well, it's so easy to invite people, and we've got the space. So it's great to have you here, Amy, as well, to talk about your wonderful piece that you contributed to the concert. And not forgetting the performers who also are composers who gave us some really beautiful stuff. Can I ask one of the panelists who would like to start to kick things off? This is the time.
I'm happy to kick things off.
Oh, Graham,
so
thank you.
It was, you know, following obviously the really terrible second wave and the uncertainties in the music industry, it was such a pleasure to work with such an immense bunch of musicians and play such wonderful pieces of music. It really was fantastic. Obviously, I think it goes without saying that everyone on planet Earth has had a bit of a shaky year. It's been really terrible, the pandemic. So when we have these moments where we can experience hope and share music as a group, and also with the audience, because the audience, there was an energy from the audience, I felt, at that evening. There was an unbelievable appreciation for live music, and it was quite emotional. You know, I felt it difficult actually to speak in the immediate aftermath of the concert, because, you know, music is so precious and it brings people together, and yeah, it really was an amazing occasion, actually. I think it was fantastic. So I was thrilled to be involved. So I'd like to thank New Music South Africa and any other stakeholders who made it possible.
What a wonderful way to start. You've reminded me of just how special it was, because I got up afterwards and I almost didn't know what to say. And I got your names wrong, David and Graham. I completely mixed up your surnames with your first names. And I'm formally again apologizing for doing that. I know exactly who you are. But wow, and the sort of tagline on the series was connectedness. And I think I spoke a little bit about that in the concert. And still, it means just as much, 3 or 4 months later, because it really was a special energy, and it is wonderful to hear that from you, Graham. I thought exactly the same, and like I said at the beginning, we need another one of these to get our spirits going again. But we can do that in this discussion too.
I had a good time also, and you know, my wish, I so wish we can do that show again, because I like to put indigenous instruments with the Western instruments. For me, it was amazing, especially the bow word. And also what was strange, because the first two songs, Lomhlaba and Diyahamba, I didn't know Neo, his last song also was about the land. So it was, I don't know, it was amazing, you know, and also the audience. You know, sometimes I like to engage the singing, the music with, sorry, with the audience. So thank you so much. It was nice working with these amazing musicians. And Leo, thank you so much. I was with you since 2010, and you know, and for me it was amazing. Also, it was also about the score. I've got a problem. I don't know how to read music, but it showed me music is not about paper only. Music, it comes from your heart. It's all about soul and also the love, and also the spirit of the musicians that you are working with, you know. So I want to do it again. Yeah. And Sazi, where are you?
Hi.
Yeah, also.
Hi.
Yeah, he's my mentor also. So yeah.
Thank you, Lungiswa. Thank you for that. Yes, I was listening just recently to the performance of the piece, and I noted, you know, some really, you know, it's quite kind of special in a way, and in a way that collaboration comes together, and the way contributions make sense. Because on the one hand, I cannot miss the fact that the format of the performance is perhaps new for the participants. It's experimental in a way, and one to get something out of it in totality, one has to read beyond the usual expectations, or maybe the usual criteria for assessing such a setting, you know, and maybe one needs to focus rather on aspects of it that is endowed with each participant, you know, the role that they play. For me, what the message that I was trying, I mean, that I got more out of in the collaboration was the message of the text itself, whereby it speaks to the condition of the world today. And for me, I think the success of the piece lies in if there was a way to communicate across the audience the meaning and the bearing of such a message, you know? And also communicated across the audience, perhaps that is not versed in the medium of communication. The language is closer. Maybe but the experience is a common experience that perhaps, I don't know if that is something that we can look at to see how experiences that are supposed to be felt across the divides of language and can be communicated in a performance or in a collaboration. Or is it essential? Maybe that's a question. Is it essential to get the totality of the message from these, two elements, whereby the essential message is in one language, and the sound itself maybe it's in another language. You could say that it's another idiom that assumes socialization of a certain way that doesn't tie in immediately with the words, with the language of the song. Maybe we can revisit that in detail, but that's what came up for me, that maybe I would like in the course of discussion to revisit. Thank you.
I think that's quite an interesting philosophical question, actually, about whether language transcends, whether music transcends languages. I mean, I guess even with famous opera arias, quite often people don't know the Russian, the French, the German, the Italian, but they understand the essence of the aria in question. They understand the music. It speaks to them. The music speaks to them. The theater of the language, the poetry of the language, even if they don't actually understand the words, speaks to them. So it's, for me, a very interesting philosophical question that you've raised, one that we might need several hours for, I suspect.
Thank you, Craig.
I was very aware too of the sense of relief almost in those gathered to have experienced something together in a singular moment. We'd all been so cooped up in our own cages of fear, really, because of what's been happening over the past year and a half all over the globe. And we still have a sense of not really understanding how to reach out to each other in ways that are safe, and how to embrace each other and how to connect. So for me, that theme was very palpable. And I know Lungiswa points to the fact that this text, Lomhlaba, was this recurring between us, unspoken. My inspiration for it came from the song that Ladysmith Black Mambazo put out in the 1970s, Lomhlaba Kaunoni, which is really, in a sense, and this touches a bit on what Sazi was talking about. The lyrical content there is almost lamentful, right? It's the realization of living in a world that is so incredibly heavy, for whom we all labor almost to the death, right? And it's never enough. And I think my composition certainly was trying to come to terms with that, trying to come to some measure of what that feels like for me as a person who works with music and making songs and making meaning out of songs. But I was also interested in communicating from a language that is for me home, right? Partly isiZulu for my family. And that is a link that I have with Lungiswa, because we're both Nguni speakers, and we've worked with each other for so many years in such different ways. This was the first time we worked together with a score, a written score as the context. And my excitement was what would happen when the language that Lungiswa Plaatjies is schooled in, which I'm also schooled in, I understand, was interrupted by another language which is on the page, which works in a different way, because that's how the classical trio has been contextualized in language terms. So for me, the language is not just about the spoken idiom, the spoken tongue, but it's also the practice and the contexts that we were trying to bring together. And the realization for me is having to build bridges, what feels like new bridge building as an exercise. So it's not only the question of building the bridge with an audience, it's also building this bridge between these very different types of musicians and having a conversation across very different types of musicianship in this country in South Africa that is so segregationist still, and where access is not necessarily granted willy-nilly to everybody. One has to almost qualify to speak certain languages and idioms, whether those be oral or whether those be musical, whether those be cultural. And I think that's an interesting conversation, philosophically, but also practically. How do we create new paradigms where such shifts and such bridge making can happen? And I was excited by the opportunity. And it's important for me to always reach for something that is slightly out of reach. So to aim for something slightly ambitious, and the impossibility of the extension is what allows us to learn from that occasion. And I certainly felt this project did that for me. And thank you very much to New Music SA and to Samro for the support. And it's great now to have this platform to reflect on it together.
Thanks for that, Neo. I was actually going to ask you a question that went in that same direction, which you made now unnecessary because you already basically answered it. But I really think that your piece is quite original in the way that it, not only bridges maybe different musical worlds, but also creates kind of another world by making this bridge. So maybe instead of just having a simple bridge, you have two bridges, and in the middle you have an island. And this island is something new. And for me, it really struck a chord because, of course, I've been trying to do similar things for a long time, and I'm actually just now working. I co-founded a band. It's really an electronic pop band in Burkina Faso, and just now I'm in the process of writing a piece for this group to play together with the Brussels Philharmonic Orchestra in Belgium, and it creates a very similar situation and challenge. I did already a piece for Burkina Electric with Orchestra for the Central German Radio Symphony Orchestra in Leipzig a couple of years ago, and this that I'm doing now is built. It's an expansion of that piece, and I'm kind of building on things that I learned from that experience. But it's really very interesting because we in the group, I mean, I read notes, but I'm not a great sight reader. But the rest of the people in the band don't, and of course the orchestra does, and we do a lot of improvising, which isn't necessarily a feature of African music. I mean, a lot of people who don't have so much contact with African music think tend to think that it's a lot more heavily improvised than it actually is. And of course, in different cultures around Africa, you find different degrees and types of improvisation. There's so many ways that you can integrate improvisation into a piece. And in various African cultures, there are various approaches to this. Really a huge multiplicity of approaches, but also there are musics in Africa that are very little improvised. And but in any case, we in Burkina Electric, we do improvise quite a bit. We use electronics, we don't use conductors. So there's all of these different let's say, approaches and different ways of thinking, different ways of acquiring the music and learning it and preparing it. And I think I think that South Africa, one of the things that fascinates me so much about South Africa is that, as you were saying, Neo, it's still quite segregated, but at the same time, it offers a pretty unique potential among places in the world as far as combining and mixing and clashing different approaches and finding new original approaches from that. And I'm just wondering, in your case, you also have a very unconventional, let's say, path as a composer. I mean, already your, let's say, educational route and your experiences. I mean, you learned, you went quite deeply into, for example, madrigal composition, which is an unusual area of concentration for a new music composer. Then also did pop music and a lot of radio work and things like that. A lot of different things that are unusual, and that I would say probably somehow came to came into this whole mix, perhaps. Then maybe just one last thing. I often think of Kofi Agabu, who said in like 2003 or something like that, he wrote that this idea that European music notation is not possible to use for African music is actually not true. That actually African music could be notated with Western music notation. Now, I actually can't say that I agree 100% with that, but I think it's an interesting thing to say, particularly for a musicologist coming from a place like Ghana, which Agawu does. And I think all of this goes to show for me that while we might be bridging these different approaches and different cultures, at the end of the day, I feel that what it really, the main message for me that it all carries is that we as humans, regardless of our culture, most of our feelings and concerns and fears and needs and expressions actually transcend cultural differences, and we have it's in common. And that oftentimes in conversations and in writings, people tend to so emphasize the differences. And at the same time, you also have the other extreme that people emphasize only the commonalities and say, oh, we can all groove to this. Music is a universal language and we're all happy. But I think that all of these extremes, at the end of the day, they tend to miss the depth of what's going on. That the depth is mostly what we have in common. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to put that out there. Maybe for Neo or somebody else, that I think it's the commonality that we find. That's at least the way it comes across to me through music like this. And that is a very humanistic, at the end of the day, a very humanistic pursuit, that we all share humanity and the human experience.
And I think there definitely is, as has been mentioned, sort of the joining of worlds. At the beginning of the program, we also included, there was work that Lungiswa and I have been doing together for quite a few years, which is sort of with the group the Nightlight Collective. Her song Hamba as an example, which I reworked for this concert to do as a piano trio format. But that sort of idea, just sort of think, I don't know if I may be thinking out loud, but just that idea of not who takes the lead in the dance, as it were, but to sort of try and find that nice kind of blend, that blend of musical ideas and musical worlds. I know that initially when we were working on these arrangements, or when I was working on these arrangements rather in 2016, 2015, around then, there was very much, a very loud voice who was my partner at the time, sort of leaning over my shoulder, saying to me along the lines of, now resist the urge to do the European composer thing, which is like, we're gonna make something big, you know, and just like really stick to the essence of the music, and just sort of to not I guess I can't think of what the word is, but to Europeanize it, for want of a better word, if that is even a word, but to rather to stick to the essence, and even if it's just a case of a re-instrumentation, but still sticking to as close as to the various lines that are happening within the music without changing it, and trying to still keep that essence, even though it's being done on European instruments, if that made any sense to but yeah, no, I think if also just sort of thinking of the rest of the program, just how there was very much this idea of bringing these worlds together. It's Neo's piece also with hints of Beethoven, and bringing that towards in it, and what we then collectively as a group did with the Beethoven 7 as well. Sort of, yeah, it was really this, I guess, this melting pot, again, for want of a better word, of just different styles all kind of slotted together, but I think quite organically, I think.
Very much organically. I mean, I was just thinking just about Amy's piece, and how sonically it was quite different to the others, but it really fit in, and worked really well. And I have to thank I mean, Amy for contributing the piece, but Matthijs also for and Graham for suggesting things and contributing. And I think we, you know, it can be quite hard when you put all these things together that are different. And I'm not sure if it's the audience that was, and the musicians and all of us just wanting to connect, that pulled it all together, or whether it was very well programmed or curated, probably a mix of it all. But it was very interesting for me, you know, listening to you talk about the lyrics and the meaning and the translation, and then to think of Amy's piece Crepuscular. I know Amy wrote these notes around it, but Amy, how does it feel to be contributing a piece like that in the middle of a concert like this, if I can put it that way, where you are, it's purely, you know, a solo instrumental piece, and we also go on a journey. Well, we definitely went on a journey, and it took us somewhere, and then we found our way back. What was it like?
Well, thanks for programming it. I mean, you know, it's hard to know what to expect with those sorts of things, like what else is going to be on the program, but I was really pleased that it was programmed. So a big thanks to David for an amazing performance, truly. Thanks for all of your efforts with that, and to everybody else at New Music SA for making it all happen. I would say, I mean, I didn't really know what to expect, but I think I can always kind of rely on that thought that, you know, I guess it's assumptive, but I think it's a good thing to assume that we all kind of are there for the best things in life. Like, we want to share music together, and we want to not only share the music itself, but the experience of like hearing music together. And I mean, unfortunately, I couldn't be in the room physically, but I was here at my desk watching, and even I felt something. It's hard to describe, but it was a really moving experience. And honestly, for the entire program, all the pieces did something different, and I think they actually complemented each other in a really good way. You know, I think when programs are too, I don't know what the word is, but probably samey, if that's a word, I think, you know, we could potentially miss out on something. So when pieces do kind of are quite contrasting, then I guess we get a better sense of what they actually are, because they can be compared to the pieces around them. Yeah.
Hi.
Sazi, you've disappeared, but we can hear you.
I'm sorry about that. Sorry. I don't know if it's a good moment to jump in. I actually want to apologize to Amy. Welcome, Amy. That I haven't had a chance to hear or look at the performance. And if it would be too much to ask, even just a little excerpt from that, it would take too much out of the program, so that maybe I could be useful in anything that I could. Is that possible? Otherwise, I'm just fine to contribute on what I've seen and to the, I don't know.
Totally possible, Sazi. I'm just going to find it. I had all of this set up, and this is the first time someone's asked for me to play an excerpt, and now the file's gone.
Look,
Murphy's Law. No, it's
if it's stressful, I would withdraw, but I really would like to see some of it, at least.
I'm also wanting to show a beautiful picture of Nonku with her eyes closed in the middle of the concert. Yes.
Maybe that says maybe, I don't know.
While you look, can I just say also thank you to Matthijs for his piece, which was another quite different angle. So I think it was a very diverse program that yet had somehow a line going through a certain atmospheric connection between the pieces. So for me, that worked very well. But being part of the New Music SA board, I of course shouldn't say that it was well curated, because I don't want to. It was actually curated in many ways by the musicians. I mean, truthfully, because the way this worked is that we, as New Music SA, we came up, we decided on a composer to commission. That was Neil. And then we made a call for scores where we asked the musicians to select scores, and we also asked the musicians to contribute further ideas and everything. So I think it was a joint kind of decentralized curatorial effort that maybe worked quite well. Rather than being too micromanagerial about the curating, we had kind of different inputs, and nobody had complete control over the curating, but in the end, somehow it worked out. And maybe that's not such a bad model. I don't know.
I found it. Oh, carry on. I was just going to say I found it a great curatorial model. So I appreciated it very much.
I was just going to add my 2 cents and let you know that I enjoyed how all the pieces weave together. I'm not particularly well versed in, I suppose, the terminology of everything, but I do, however, love, I suppose, the possibility of being able to close your eyes and interpret things very differently. And I remember, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I remember it from memory, but Matthijs, was yours the one with the sliding?
Yeah, all the harmonics.
That was, I still remember those were quite goosebump inducing moments. And then I remember with Amy's piece as well, kind of each piece demanded your attention, but I think in a way that kind of forced you to immerse yourself in it. And I remember saying to Cameron that I often enjoy facing away from the music as well, just to feel it. And I could imagine what that would have been like as well. You know what I mean? The power of also just being able to experience a lot of the music without necessarily having to see you, because of the way everything moved, from the voice to how everything was interpreted, to also kind of having fun with regards to just feeling how everything meshed together. Because obviously I would suppose it'd be a bit of a challenge with regards to then not being a BPM and trying to keep rhythm. So I suppose the parts where all of that meshed together, also the parts where it wasn't necessarily perfect, was just so beautiful, So just wanted to say thank you. It felt like a very beautiful first night out after a long while, and I was very honored to be invited.
I said to Matthijs on the night, the phrase that people often use about people have passed on, greats who've passed on, so and so would be turning in their grave. I think Matthijs, I was saying to you, I think Beethoven would be sitting up and really trying to check out and listen to what you did to his piece.
I love your description of calling it a remix at times, but yeah, no, thank you.
I've got the video here, so I'll jump in quickly. It's amazing how complicated it is. As soon as I'm just about to click share, I can't unmute myself, and then someone talks. So I'm just gonna jump in. We'll listen to a bit of Amy's, and we can always play some more of the others. Did I start it too early, Amy?
I don't know. It seems to be frozen on my end.
Okay, let's try again.
Cameron, I think there's a problem. Sorry. I'm not sure if anyone can hear it. I heard little.
Was no one hearing that? Sorry, I thought we were all
hear
okay.
it.
Oh heavens, sorry. Someone say something faster next time.
Sorry.
Because we've been through this before, and you know, I've done everything correctly, supposedly, but I was just about to say the visuals are not matching with the audio, which yeah. So I am not sure what to do to correct that, so we'll just carry on for now. And
thank you for trying, Cameron. Amy, I must apologize not being perhaps not being useful, but I will certainly listen after the session. I just wanted to pick on Nonku's kind of reaction to your piece, to emphasize, you know, perhaps things that I found most refreshing about experimental and kind of spontaneous performance, in that they fall out of the box of what you'd say rehearsal and at times, and in that also for the first encounter, uninitiated encounter, they do present moments whereby what one knows and expects is shattered, and depending on how open you are in breadth of music as an experience, you could quite be alienated by some of the things that composers try and how they get realized in performance. And it does take quite kind of a broader aesthetic and artistic sensitivity to appreciate those as part of the process of communication, you know, of a synthesis of an individual kind of effort and inspiration with that of performance and contribution from such a collaboration. So I just wanted to say that.
I don't know if we should try again. I'm getting instructions here, but I've done exactly what I've always done. How is that? Can we hear? Yes, okay, okay. I'm going to share again and we'll come right. Apologies, everyone. So I'm gonna stop it there, showing just how the visuals are not in sync with the audio. But I hope that was the right, the right place to play it from.
I suppose I should say something at this point. Yeah, no, I still break out into a sweat if I think of Amy's piece. No one had heard it in its entirety till the concert. Even Matthijs and Graham and Lulu, they were like, "Oh, let's hear." I was like, "No, not a chance, not a chance. Anyone is hearing this." When I was practicing it at the university, I had a colleague coming from downstairs saying like, "Oh, what is this? You could just play it with your elbows." I had my dearest other pianist next door come in saying, "How long does it take to clean your piano?" So yeah, all of those did happen to me. It was a challenge, but I mean, it's not like I haven't done it. I used to play a lot of Schoenberg, a lot of Messiaen, so I do like playing it, especially experimental music. And I mean, I apologize to Neo for your piano. It's turned into a bit of a percussion instrument at some points, which, yeah, I mean, it's what the music called for, I felt. I really, speaking about the programming, I do think it did fit in nicely. It did take you onto that plateau of Matthijs's piece as well. So you had the Beethoven sort of in the middle, and then Matthijs's piece on one side and Amy's piece on the other side. And then obviously Lulu and Neo's pieces at the beginning and the end. So it was actually quite symmetrical if you look at it in that way. I mean, that piece was challenging. I only found the clip 2 weeks ago, I think it was, on YouTube. And when I saw the concert, I was like, oh my God, I started sweating. I had to go take a shower afterwards. And every time I hear it, I'm like, it was a challenge, but it was absolutely beautiful and it was wonderful to play. I must say thank you, Amy. I stupidly, the morning of the concert, listened to a different recording of it and I was like, I'm doing this all wrong, aren't I? And then I was like, no, your choices are your choices. Just do what you're doing. And yeah, it was a very challenging, but I did enjoy it very much. Piece to play. Thank you. I do need to thank you so much for it. It was awesome.
No, you really did a wonderful job of it, David. And you know, that was the second performance of the piece.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's always interesting as a composer to see what happens the second time, because then you have two and you can compare. But I was so thrilled with how you approached it and what you did with it, and I'm so happy. So thank you. And
thank you.
Even if I wasn't that happy, like, I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. Like, that's actually so important as well. But I'm very, very happy. So thanks. And it's interesting that you had someone talk about using elbows, because the pianist I wrote it for had actually asked for some specific, she had specific requirements at the time, because she was like suffering a tiny bit of tendinitis for the first time ever. So she was like, okay, I don't want this to like be anything too. So I thought, well, let's use some other parts of the body, maybe. Just to,
exactly.
You know, so she's fine though. She's all good. In very good health.
I don't know if this is a silly aside, but speaking of the tendinitis, what was mentioned earlier about my piece for the harmonics, it was written that way for a similar reason. At the time, I was struggling a bit with my hands, and there was something we were going to record. So it was just like, okay, let me just write something where it's literally just sliding up and down the instrument. So inadvertently, there's that link again somehow. But yeah.
Yeah, I
know. No, it's okay. Carry on, Emmy.
Oh, sure, thanks. I was just going to say, I love the idea of responding to our bodies with our music. And I think that's something that kind of transcends languages often. It may not be totally universal, but I think it's something that it interests me, at least. I like to do kind of like think about physical approaches to the music. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that's awesome. Do you mean, Amy, you actually wrote the choreography of David's, like, is that on the score as well?
There's a little bit, a tiny bit of that.
No, I was sensing it was so impassioned, and he put, I know piece, it's a difficult piece in my reckoning, especially in performance. And I should be grateful, that within this context, that writers such as yourself could, interface and find and challenge, a certain, caliber of interpretation and playing that is certainly there, as you've seen, and also is able to inspire, interpretation and performance as it did. I suppose that's a privilege. I can imagine where one can write, something out to be played at an exhibition, and then, it wasn't possible either because of the kind of caliber, I should say, or the pitching of, the challenge, often, experimental works are challenging to interpret and execute. So I'm grateful to see that this is possible, and that within the setup, composers and performers can communicate, successfully in the rendition of a piece in this way. Perhaps going back to some of the musings that are put forward at the beginning, not on the same scale, but to say that in realizing that there is very strong verbal message, textual messages embedded in the piece. Of course, including language, spoken language, and tradition in a way. And also from the instrumental side is a tradition, that there is perhaps a bigger challenge in making those meet and communicate in their entirety, or in a perhaps more, I suppose, expected way, fully what each is about. For example, I sense that there may well be a compromise, that is asked for in contributions to the collaboration, that's perhaps the least that I can say at this moment, that a certain compromise, and perhaps the success of the collaboration is in lessening such compromises, so that maybe when you write, you are able really to challenge people and use their best, their best that they can contribute, which I think the most, in this case, kind of the other side of the coin is that you could write something and it would be maybe too easy and meaningless for the performance, that kind of thing, which would be unfortunate, because then it only becomes a show, and yeah, no, that's just a view, an observation I'd like to put out there.
I think I respond to that very, very strongly, Sazi. Thank you. I think that's, for me, a primary concern is to really to try to diminish the extent to which the bringing together of these different languages and these different registers inhibits us into structures of compromise, but also to approach a way where it can be challenging and enjoyable on the other side of the challenge for the participants is important. That for me is central. Also, what Lukas pointed to earlier, the ideas of the polarity. Either all cultures are so different and unique, they don't meet, or cultures are just the same anyway, we're all just grooving and we all love each other. I think to resist those tendencies to fall into the trap of either or, and to live inside of this very difficult space that is in the middle, which we could call balance. And to my mind, balance is never about staying fixed in a comfortable middle spot or place. It's really a movement. Balance is a state of motion. It's a pendulum that strikes at these varieties of sides and directions in an attempt to try and find a place for compromise to be stretched and made elastic as much as possible for each of the diverse individuals involved. And I mean, I had the great fortune of knowing artistically quite a number of the people on the call. I mean, I'm excited that I have worked and thought with Nonku Phiri quite a lot, who works with composition and electronics and how you see the world. Nonku excites me. Lungiswa, on the other hand, is another vocalist who works with technology, but old technology, very much like Sazi Dlamini, making instruments. And these technologists of the old, but bringing them into the contemporary and the new. And Lukas, I've heard your work in LA, but I also I know Burkina Electric, and just excited about the spectrum of material that you cover. And Matthijs is an old collaborator, and having followed your work, the arrangements that you've done for other people, but also your own particular compositions that you've done. So I think in every sense, and Amy, I've heard your work for many years. We haven't met, but I've heard your music and read your scores. And what occurs to me is that there is such a diversity of voices here that we're all inevitably going to be transcending all kinds of difficult, challenging boundaries. And the question that Sazi poses then is for me an interesting one, is how do we continue to do this in ways that are more and more successful? For me, that is a strong interest.
Thank you, Neo. Thank you for that. Thank you for your contribution. Yeah, I think it's always challenging to try and find middle ground, especially in your case where the tradition is classical and the instrumentation, and then the other element is very traditional, as you say, and in its own way and grounded in a certain way of music and cultural socialization, that one could perhaps pay more attention to a degree as to how engage with those extremes in a certain way. I'm sorry if I may be sounding critical. I'm just observing some of the strength of the elements that can be looked at in this very, very challenging. I know how challenging it is to bring, especially in music, where this is perhaps the only possible platform to bring disparate experiences. As you've seen me working with Jorgen, working with electronics, and and me going to the bush to cut bamboo to respond to a very, very abstract, well, let me say, digitally abstract conceptual, form, and addressing it as well textually, metaphorically, and so you have to find a certain language of talking, that I found it is. I appreciate the effort of trying to bring those together, and would encourage you to experiment more on this, to draw out from each element, pull out from the classical tradition a more unexpected, syncopated, I would say, sensibility. I'm not saying that, but I would dearly love to see how that could be thought of consciously, to bring out the consciously multimetric interaction even between the ensemble itself, maybe from the more acoustic traditional elements, maybe settling it into a more familiar, kind of spontaneous territory, maybe rather than trying to draw it maybe into the oratorial, of which I did sense that there could have been much more leeway if perhaps it was, Lungi's part was more improvised. I don't know how much of it was, but I feel that there could have been much more space, to expand the space of interaction had you given this thought been maybe more pronounced in conversation. But otherwise, I'm grateful for the experience.
To add to that, traditional instruments.
Can you come a bit closer, Lungiswa? Just come a bit closer to the sound source.
About indigenous instruments. I grew up in a family where I've learned all these indigenous instruments, akadinda, lira, wadi, mkube. I wrote Undihamba with, I used Nyunga, the African tampiam from Mozambique. And then I've recorded, and then I've used Nyunga and Sipano Marimba. And because I was struggling, I didn't want any westernized instrument. And then I was struggling with the drum because I didn't want to play djembe or bass drum. So what I did, I took elements, just a dish, then I put it on the table because I love the calabash. This instrument, the calabash is from Mali. So I did that and I put it on the table, and then I took the mic and put it underneath the table. Then I've played. If you can hear Undihamba, the recording in my CD. So now my challenge was the first time I've worked with Matthijs, because when I recorded the song, I recorded that was it. There was no in the live show. I would just play it. There's no paper where I have to to sing just 4 bars and then I stop and then start again. So for me it was challenging because he wrote it and then he put it on a score, and then for me it was like, oh my God, what is this now? So I have to sing it like bars and bars. And then for me, it was really, really challenging. So, but I managed to do that. And also it was a learning curve for me. Even because now I have to, every time I play, I can't just say, if there's no drum, I have to use amakacha-kacha. Amakacha-kacha is a foot percussion, so that I can get the rhythm, so that also I can help the guys, Matthijs, and because of the rhythm, you know. And also in the first song, Lomshaba, Uyawaza Mayeza, it's a traditional song where traditional healers, they just trance, they just sing, and then they use a bass drum. So what I did, I just rearranged the song, and then I played Uadi, and then I asked the guys, please, can you play anything? Because I wanted them to sing, but we didn't have enough time because it was gonna be beautiful if they sing and also play. But they did amazing thing, and also the meaning of Lomshaba Uyawazamaya is this land knows the medicine, because music is medicine, humanity is medicine, love is medicine. So that's the meaning of the song. That's why I wanted to open the show with that song, and also to change the song. And also these guys, they did really, really amazing things. Although these indigenous instruments, it's because I have to lead and they have to follow me, because there's a tuning problem. You can tune it now, and then when you play, it just changes. You know, but and I'm saying it again, my wish is we need to do this show, you know. And also why I choose to play indigenous instruments, because what I found out, the kids of today, you go to the townships, the kids, they don't know this instrument. They don't know where they come from. And these instruments are fading slowly but surely. And now that's why I'm pushing to go out and play this instrument. And then also I formed a ladies group called Ancient Voices. We are two, so we play this instrument. So
Lulu, whenever it was 2 months ago in May when we did the concert, I remember you telling me afterwards that there have been some in Langa, in the community center, there have been some the opportunities for young children to learn indigenous African instruments. Has the pandemic, I'm guessing, created a barrier for that to sort of continue, or is it?
Yeah, now we can't do anything.
Mm. So I mean, hopefully in the next few months, maybe when more people have been vaccinated, is the hope to restart those lessons?
That's my passion. You know, I want to give back to my community of what I'm doing.
Yeah. Interestingly, on the topic of the pandemic, we actually didn't. We were struggling to find rehearsal spaces that were big enough. So we actually did all the rehearsals in Langa, in Lulu's studio, which was fantastic. And I've never seen a larger collection of musical instruments in one space than in that studio upstairs, with the most spectacular view of the sunset behind Table Mountain. Just, you know, it's actually a real treat to rehearse that in Langa there, in that studio.
Yeah, it was amazing. So feel free to come and we are waiting for you guys.
I definitely will.
So, Sazi, you were going to say something? We can't hear you, but you aren't muted. Just not getting your audio. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, no, I was just wanted to express appreciation, Eddie. I think it's very brave to venture into one another's spaces, not only physically, metaphorically, but that I'm glad to hear that Graham went over and actually they were in the same space, especially in the days when composition can sometimes mean that people just send, material over and it travels and it gets mixed without the actual experimenting physical proximity. I just want to express my gratitude that also being part of sensing, the input and the collaboration, being in the same space as artists. And also in this case whereby Lungiswa is also an activist, of indigenous, kind of music and kind of a revival, and that it is kind of a hot ball to juggle, that which emphasizes and tries to recover tradition, to juggle that with experimentation. I know this to be a fact, that it's kind of challenging to have to extract, elements that are steeped in tradition and are also exist for that kind of deployment that they want to emphasize, certain repertoires, certain approach to repertoires, and then put them in an arena of experimentation, which is pretty much the same setup with the piece of Neo and where Lungiswa. I think it talks to very much the same thing, that it's a very challenging arena that can only get better and more engaging as one finds a way of how to make these broad areas of engagement and demands from knowledge, from specialization of knowledge into an area of experimentation. Because in itself, that's very radical to, for example, a person who's used to a certain sound of the Mbira. Now they encounter it in a certain context where it doesn't, manifest the same identities and expectations of the cut. There is a big challenge, and it is a space of freedom, really, and perhaps expresses just that the artist, perhaps as a singular person who questions, identity, belonging in a certain way that is sometimes privileged and sometimes responsible, and has to speak for more than the individual themselves in a certain setting.
I'm not sure if I have a question or a comment, but I was wondering how we would achieve this again, because I think this concert was the other concerts that we did were fantastic, but somehow I don't know if it was because we had people that had worked together so much and that everyone was sort of on the same page, and of course everyone wanted to be in a concert and to play and to hear music, but what is it that we can do to make sure that always happens, whether it's in the types of pieces being put together or the musicians that we put together? And I was thinking how Matthijs, you seem to be known as someone who can approach other people's music and arrange it so sensitively and beautifully, without taking away from the music, but adding to it. And just from an arranging perspective, I was wondering if is it the approach of this respect and humanity and this mutual understanding that you have towards the music that maybe makes a concert like this so easy and just so effective. And that's why I say, I don't know if this is a question or a comment, because I'm wanting to know what you all thought of, or what you all think of how, you know, what the key is here. Yeah, I don't know if I'm asking anything.
I think
otherwise I'm just going to.
What definitely helped, as has been touched upon, I think, is that because there were multiple composers involved with it, as well as performing, I mean, that definitely not dictated, but helped choose the programming, how we did that. So I remember when we were talking about putting together the program, I felt at the time that for me, it felt like a no-brainer if both of us are involved to include both of our work, all the stuff that we've done together. I think, I mean, from an arranging side, what was so much fun for this concert was how we approached the Beethoven, the slow movement of that. That was very much a collaborative process between the four of us, that we decided, because I remember we were told had to include a Beethoven. That I think was the brief that we got. And I know at one point David suggested there was one of the piano trios, and this was the first concert that I had done in front of people in a room in about a year. And I remember he sent me the link, and it was one of those like follow along to the score as you're like watching it. And I got about 2 minutes in, took one of those like, nope, not doing that. No, thank you. Like, you want me to learn how to play the violin again in a week? Forget it. No. But that aside, I mean, it was that idea of like, well, it just felt kind of not out of place, because I can understand why it was going to be included, also especially because of what Neo did with his piece by bringing that world of Beethoven. So I think it was ultimately decided like, well, I think I suggested the slow movement of Beethoven 7 just because it's like, I like the piece. I think it's definitely the best thing that Beethoven has written. Sorry for release fans. But it was just kind of a nice idea of just like, well, let's take there was an existing arrangement, and sort of the more we rehearsed the whole program and the more we spoke about it, it was kind of decided just like, you can't just do a straight Beethoven. It just doesn't feel in place with the rest of the ideas of what was going on. So there was a very fun afternoon where it was sort of like, I think what I remember suggesting was sort of like, well, the opening, especially kind of again going with what is going on around us, it just sort of felt like, you know, post-apocalyptic landscape, and somehow you have Twinkies, cockroaches, and Beethoven survives. And it's just sort of that idea of like, from the wreckage, that you have those iconic slow chords just sort of coming out of that. And we went from there, and it just became this idea of like, okay, well, what if we do the swung, or what if we, you know, have Lulu improvise in the middle and bring it all together. And there again, it just added, especially this, like each of our own voices to it. So I think that definitely helped with the mood of the overall thing, the overall concert. I think there's also definitely, because of especially made more apparent, especially because of our work together, I would say that there was a slight kind of a feel for those of people who've seen concerts of the Nightlight Collective, with the stuff that I've done with Cara Stacey and Delina Juritz and Sarah Evans and with the Toy. that there is that sort of, you know, we would do programs of a lot of new music and sorry, just a cat leap in front of the screen. Hi, Antonio. But yeah, just that sort of that idea of bringing those worlds together. It felt very comfortable. It felt very like this feels like home. This idea of sort of bringing these ideas together. I'm not sure if now I answered your question because I got distracted by a cat, but I mean, it was a cat. I had to acknowledge it. Yeah, but I think like the Beethoven, as like the rest of the program was beautiful. I do feel, especially as I wouldn't call myself an ex-classical musician, but I don't play as much classical purebred music as I used to in a very long time. Kind of proud of that. I think like as a group, I think we like, I mean, from my side, just as someone who's like hasn't played the string sonata in a very, very, very long time, it's nice to kind of play something that was just like feel familiar. And I think also just as I go on a long ramble, like I think part of what I think everyone is going through at the moment with the pandemic is that sort of, I think we are all climbing back into nostalgia. We're all climbing back into stuff that meant a lot to us growing up. And it was very nice to approach something that I haven't really listened to since, you know, I was first year, second year varsity. And, you know, like the story that I said to a friend of mine about it, I remember doing a Mozart concerto when I was a student and being told off that like you can't do a gliss like that in a Mozart concerto. And it's just like, wow, if only I had known like how many years later it's like Beethoven, rip, like let's go, like let's just do what we want to. So that also felt quite nice to sort of, I guess as a performer, get to that point of just like, no, why do I have to do it? Why do we have to do it as just like, as it is on the page? Like, as David was saying earlier, like, you know, you stick to your choices and you do it with enough conviction, and then, you know, people go along with it. Like, okay, this is what we're doing. Let's do it. I don't know if that answers your question or started more, but
yeah. It does. It picks up on something that we were talking about in the first webinar with Waldo Alexander and Tisetso Mashishi. So the first concert was Machikiza and Mozart, and the whole series was celebrating composers from South Africa and composers, you know, like Mozart, Beethoven, and Stravinsky. And it's not every day that you get asked to play a Mozart in the middle of a new music concert or a Beethoven in the middle of a new music concert. We didn't actually know what was going to happen, but they did a Mozart duo for violin and viola. And we had Richard and Sue Cock in the audience. And Sue said to me after the concert, why didn't they play the Mozart in their own way and not like Mozart wrote it, you know? And I suppose we didn't think of it at the time. When I walked into the sound check at Youngblood and you guys were playing the Beethoven, I thought, why didn't they do this? Because it was just so cool. It just worked really well. And I look forward to hearing another version of it, because I said to Lungiswa, you know, just go more crazy, go with it, because it was great. Yeah, thank you for your thoughts on that, Matthijs. We're sitting at 6:20 and we still have time. I'm not sure if anyone has anything else they wanted to say. Yeah, Lukas.
I just wanted to ask a question about the electronics in the concert. We talked about instruments and things like that, but especially Neo, what was the role of the electronics in your piece? And yeah, how I think it also.
And when the commission came across from you, the brief to me was, what would it feel like when Joseph Shabalala comes into contact with Ludwig van Beethoven? And I at first thought it was a joke, and it was a kind of a throwaway proposal, which I I enjoyed because I found it a little bit, I don't know, unexpectedly free. And then I thought, no, actually, let me take it seriously. What would that mean? And Mambazo for me happened to be one of the key archives that I've grown up really appreciating and in a way have learned to understand vocal technique also from how they've worked as an ensemble. So I certainly wanted to have them in the room. I wanted to have the ghost of Waba Joseph in the space. And so I wanted to put him and his voice and the ensemble's voice in conversation with Lungiswa's voice. So this is partly also in response to Sazi. Yes, the tape effect was entirely an improvisational artifact, and it was something that I constructed electronically, and it was a disruption to what was happening. I mean, there was a lot of rhythmic variety. There was hocketing in the strings. There was a lot of references to old style classical technique and how it speaks to or doesn't speak to the kind of classical technique that Lungiswa happens to come from. So I enjoyed very much stretching the bounds of these two paradigms, which happen to be paradigms that I exist inside of too. And so to do it electronically for me was just another nod to another paradigm which has become a very strong influence presently in my life, particularly now that I'm associating with superstars like Nonku, and the conversation around the electronic, the elasticity of the electronic has become really fascinating for me. And then of course the question was, how do we perform it, right? How do you make it available for performance in rehearsal, and then how do you replicate it? And so we had a laptop, and so Lulu, bless you, Lungiswa is the bravest singer of any sort I know, because she said, I don't read score, but I'll learn how to read your score. I don't really use computers because I use my acoustic instruments, but I'll play your tape effect through this. And then she had to kind of modulate herself with the machine as she was talking acoustically in a room full of live musicians and live bodies. And to be honest, you're the only person, Lulu, I could rely on to help me conceive that. This piece for me wouldn't have been possible without, firstly, the three musicians, with Matthijs, with Graham and David, doing what they do so incredibly well. And I mean, to approach something like this, everybody has to be open to exploring in a space that is nervous making, right? There's no comfort blanket there for you. You're constantly being pulled slightly out of your comfort zone. So to have the three of you, and to have Lulu, who I know, Lulu is always available for musical risk. So I thought, well, let's just try something we haven't tried before. And so it was a real pleasure. And to do it electronically with the voices in the background, did something mysterious in the room. I felt like people were looking around for, where's that sound coming from? And what is it exactly? Because you couldn't even hear what it was, right? It had been so mangled and manipulated, you couldn't really detect it as music that came from men or human beings. So it was a kind of a ghostly figure in the room that kept adding kind of electric disturbance into a very quaint acoustic performance.
Thank you so much, Neil.
And we didn't hear the slight hum before, you know, the electronics started in your piece in the room, but if you listen to the recording, you can hear it. And in that moment, I don't know where it came from, but I was worried about it. But with your piece, it was nice to hear it sort of like there. It brought that presence. And
well, I put the hum there. It wasn't an electrical fault.
Right, but there was a hum. What I'm saying is, maybe if I articulate it differently, it came out in other places in the concert, and it didn't sound like it was out of place there because of the electronics.
course, I was the dumbass in the final dress rehearsal that when the electronics started, it was sort of like, is that buzz gonna be there? Like, can someone fix that? But yes.
I remember you saying that. I'm glad you didn't.
Warn us.
Well, it was a little surprise, a gift.
Well, I am very sorry to break your train of thought, Neil. I am very grateful for the experience, for this experience. I must say that up front, but I must also say that I've got a very niggling thought about the exercise where I'm missing how the conception of the pieces misses some of the more pressing questions of the day. Like we're talking about disparate worlds, you know, and maybe even linear worlds, reinterpretation, and how here there's a space maybe to speak of some of the broader questions of the day, like, for example, decoloniality, how to practice decoloniality in a privileged context like this, where we have some elements that can speak or symbolically speak, you know, to the position of subject and structure and history in a context of culture. You know, for example, rather than speak about, you know, innate elements put into it, how do these represent institutions and main thoughts of the day that are kind of ready to upset the paradigms at the core? You know, what does it mean to have a tradition of a, you know, classical tradition and all its, you know, what would you say, baggage, if I may say so, in practice, in theory, in culture, in critique, to put it, to pit it against a tradition that's trying to reassert itself, especially away from the bearing of coloniality, cultural, sonic, you know, and also bring messages of immediate experiences of this, you know, stressed, challenged indigeneity, questions of power. I miss that debate, which I think as a new
I'm not sure how you're missing it, that debate in this particular conversation, Sazi. Particularly because I think what Lungiswa offers us is exactly that exemplar, right? The physicality of a Black woman playing traditional instruments in the way that she's known to do in a gallery that is in a very privileged part of Cape Town in the 21st century, right? In a moment where people have been denied the joy of meeting, speaks directly, I think. I mean, I'm not sure how you're seeing it, but to me, that speaks incredibly powerfully to the question of decoloniality and the attempt at approaching or seeking to make an approach between a Beethoven and a Shabalala. And I'm referring just to the work that I was concerned with, is certainly being done from a lens of crossing boundaries that ne'er should meet at the academy. So our friends at UCT, and I'm sure you know this well, wouldn't necessarily have that be a natural environment for them to meet. This, for me, is what the New Music Essay project has been about. Now, we can choose to disagree on whether that was done in the way that we each would prefer. But certainly, I think all of the stuff you are surfacing has been a strongly kind of forethought in all the work that we've done, not just from this piece, by the way. I'm talking here with people who I've known for many years, and it's a lens through which we've looked at work for many, many years of our collaboration. And I think the question is, why aren't there more opportunities to do this? For me, that is what I would say is lacking in this country. But certainly I found this very much an opportunity that does exactly what you're suggesting, Sazi.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. So in so saying, you're talking about now the venue being adequate, kind of a symbol if not the actual practice of decoloniality, that the performances are happening where they are. Or let me say, I just miss a certain kind of just a hook whereby beyond the performance, what we're seeing can be spoken of, and be the basis for addressing some of the bigger questions of decolonialism. You've just told me one, and I'm sure this perhaps not the only way. For example, certain questions can be put, to say, what if the performance wasn't happening at an an exclusive place of traditional exclusivity? What if it was maybe on the street? Would it still have been perceived as a decolonial as it as you say it can be, or it is in a space of a gallery? That's just one thing. But thank you for your response, and maybe we can build on that going to the future too, so that perhaps the performances are relevant to such questions. Exactly, that they do speak for practices that perhaps are implicated or can implicate themselves in a way, as being part of coloniality, and need to be drawn out to see how within themselves or in combination with other practices bear on such processes of decoloniality. For example, Amy's piece, and it's played by David Lubbe. I would need some guidance to see it in this rubric of decoloniality. I see it perhaps more as linear, and artistic, and more even perhaps intimate in practice, not necessarily, addressing, at least not explicitly speaking to some, or unless there is another take to it.
I could just chip in there. Yeah, I wouldn't say that this possibly addresses that directly. I mean, it was programmed like, in the way that I think Lukas described earlier on. But what it does address, for me at least, it's one of kind of the first pieces in this sort of experimentation that I'm trying, which is addressing more a slightly different issue, but related, which is, I suppose, decentering the human, really, and looking to the earth and the natural world for, I guess, having a better understanding, or at least appreciation of the importance of healthy ecosystems and that sort of thing. That's what I'm dealing with, at least in my creative practice at the moment. So this piece was one of those sort of entries into that exploration, if that makes sense. Oh, sorry, Sazi, you're muted.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for that. Also, in saying upfront that I'm not aware of what the actual brief was. I'm just jumping in here, and do appreciate that your conception did, in fact, address to some of the issues that maybe even very implicitly kind of encompassed by the whole decolonial approach, bearing on environment and sensitivity to that. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And also not discounting that within the linearity of praxis itself, there should be room for questioning, one's subjectivity, even agency in the colonial. That is another very broad, that practices can still talk within themselves, not necessarily jumping, but they still can question. I'm just like thinking here that it's still perhaps a process that can be, or questions that can still be addressed still within the linearity of practice, where like a reflection, reflective thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think these are really interesting ideas and comments. I think we need to maybe have a separate webinar on this question of decolonization. It's one that in South Africa is extraordinarily complex. I mean, in some parts of the world, there are discussions of decolonization where there is no history of colonization. So it's very difficult to decolonize something that's never been colonized in the first place. But in South Africa, of course, there's this extremely complex history of colonization that goes in many levels, and I think in many levels, in many ways, in many aspects culturally, and in some ways it's undoing itself, and in some ways it's very persistent. Not that it's being advanced by maybe any particular person per se, but just through an accumulation of actions and non-actions also. So I think it's an extremely complex area that maybe we should at some point, I think New Music SA doesn't only have to put on concerts and give composition commissions and things like that, but I think we can also do something to, it's not a musicological organization, but I think we musicians also have something to say about all of these things, and particularly as practice-based research, which sits in a way, in a very important juncture between, let's say, if we're talking about music now, music and musicology, because music, we're making music. Musicology usually is done by people who did not make the music, who then analyze it or philosophize about it in some way. It's very important. I mean, for me as a composer, musicology is actually a huge inspiration. But then you have this thing of practice-based research, which actually makes the artist into a researcher. So that means you can actually research the creative process from within. And I think that being that we're all musicians, all people who create stuff, I think we can maybe illuminate these kinds of discussions in a different way from the pure musicologists that sit in certain academic departments and things like that. So I know some of us sit in academic departments, even that includes myself, but I think I still think that this, let's say, illumination of the process from the inside is a new thing, and I think it can also lead us to maybe new takes on this whole problem of decolonization and interculturality and all of these things. And again, I think no more interesting place in the world to discuss this than South Africa, quite frankly. So yeah, maybe we should do something there. I think we're getting kind of close to the end of our time, right? But I think this has been an extremely I don't want to close it like that, but I'm just saying I think it's been an extremely interesting discussion. Any last round, maybe, or but Cameron, you say, if I don't want to just I just think that the people watching it probably they can't take too much more of.
Yeah, we can have a last round. We should close soon. It's in moments like these where I wish I had the guts just to get up. If we were in a room, I'd get out my instrument and just play, because I don't have any words. I'd rather just play something on my sax. But if anyone wants to chip in, that that's cool. Otherwise, we'll bring it to a close. I mean, I think it's been a very interesting discussion so far, and we must certainly carry on.
I think that shows the power of being a musician somehow, you know, that you can then, you know, launch into this abstract language or non-language, whatever it shall be, of just playing music. And maybe some things are best discussed by making sound. By abstract sound, like musical sound rather than word sound, or maybe word sound can be musical sound too. I mean, we could even make a piece out of this whole discussion.
Absolutely. I can confidently say I would be more comfortable doing that.
But thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all for joining us and for your time.
Come to the music business seminars, because we also got to somehow make a living, all of us too, right?
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
Thank
So
you.
just a shout out to our sponsors, Samro and the Samro Foundation, the Rupert Music Foundation, and as well as the National Arts Council and Nedbank, and along with the Arts and Culture Trust. It's been an amazing series of things, lots of different activities. We're not quite finished yet, but we soon are closing the digital endeavor, and really thanking you all for your contributions here and in the concerts and online, and through the emails. And please stay in touch. The Cape Town people, I feel like you guys are always quite far away, but hopefully we'll be in Cape Town soon. And let us know when you're in Joburg. And we've got plans coming up, so let's keep doing more of this. I won't be the one to lead the discussions, because I don't feel like I'm the one to do that, but we'll play.
That's great.
Cool. All right, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great seeing you all.
Thank you for the concert and for the discussion.
Thank you, everybody.
Fantastic. Lovely to see you all.
Good night.